So I guess just for a start, just for the folks who are here, perhaps just tell us how did you land up where you are today?
So,
Briefly.
yeah, where do you start? Now, I suppose my career in New Zealand has come from mostly working at Foodstuffs, so a fairly large retail organisation. They did a pretty big Skype for Business implementation, just in their support centre. Took them a really long time, cost them a lot of money, and I think they're probably still rolling it out as we speak. It's a big project. So I got used to Skype over there and fell in love with it, and sort of from there I moved to Kotahi quite recently, and my role there is Head of Operational Excellence, and I look after a mixture of their traditional operations, service desk functions, incident management, all the standard operation stuff. But the other part of my role is more digital ops, so that's more DevOps and bringing in agile practices and a bit of change in the organisation from being a traditional business to being a cloud platform first type of organisation.
Thanks. And what made your business today, or the decision to roll out teams or to adopt teams? What was behind that decision? What was the driver?
Yeah, so we've got really nice fancy offices, and I don't know where to put my hands. Really nice fancy offices, but we were quite bound to our office. So everything we needed to do was you needed to be in the office. You couldn't do things remotely. Your telephone system was essentially plugged into the office. We've got a mini call center, and the people there are bound to handsets, telephones. So when I walked in there and I saw these people with their arms on their neck trying to type away, definitely it's got to go. But I think the bigger reason is we were driving, and we were all desktop based, laptops and anything. We were driving to be a lot more flexible from our staff perspective, but also from a business continuity perspective, being able to move and work from anywhere should disaster strike, so that we were there. So that was the call to how do we move to a telephony solution that's going to enable that, and how do we move to a just be more mobile, so laptops and those types of things.
Okay. And how were you collaborating before you used Teams? What was the day-to-day collaboration like?
So it was quite one way, I suppose. We had SharePoint, which is pretty good at sort of being one-way communication. We had from a business perspective, we had a news page, and we had a really clunky way of trying to feed this news with new information, so you could go and like that information. But it was kind of push to the organisation. So the CEO would put up a message, and people would have to go read that. They couldn't react to it. They couldn't really communicate and say, well, that's not great, or that's cool, or get excited about things. So we had SharePoint as our main sort of tool to push information out to our staff. And then from a telephony perspective, it was just standard PSTN type call and stuff.
Okay. Must have been a big change.
Yes. Yeah.
So what about the executives? How did you manage to, because generally if the execs don't like it, it's not happening. So how did you get their buy-in?
I'm really good at PowerPoint. No. They bought into it from, they had the problem to solve around business continuity, and just giving them that capability to say, actually, this is going to unlock some of that. We're going to allow people to be able to work from home, work from anywhere. They were sold quite quickly, so it wasn't too much of a sell. And I think that's really enabled us to accelerate that journey. Yeah.
So what I've noticed is once you have the CEO and the CIO and all the execs are sold, the next challenge is how are you going to get adoption rates up? Because people generally, how often have we heard people say, we don't like change, people resist change. It's true, isn't it? But there's always a reason. So how did you manage that? How do you manage the adoption approach?
People are stuck in their ways, and when you're used to having your phone on your desk where you can pick up and press a number, people just love that. And the minute you take it away from them, you're kind of taking away their personal belongings, is what they feel like. But I think just showing the values and showing the benefits. So you speak about Fonterra, for example. we didn't have Skype before this, or we kind of had Skype, but only I.M.H.O present, and not everybody had it. And dealing with the likes of Fonterra, where they were all on Skype, being able to communicate with them directly on a daily basis on things that they could just, Fonterra could ask questions or ask a staff question and go back, rather than sit on the phone for, waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for things to happen. That really enabled us to have some real good conversations around the benefits to some of our key shareholders and key businesses. So they caught on to that quite easily. I think, rolling out with new headsets, to a degree, does seem like you're giving people something new, a new flash toy. We were also rolling out laptops at the time, so it did make it easier. But getting rid of the phones was probably the harder part.
Okay.
We're mostly a Microsoft, or primarily a Microsoft business. We've got big investments in Azure. We've rolled out the Office 365 space. We've SharePoint. We've since then added Dynamics 365. So as a business, the move towards a Microsoft product was an easier choice. I think the integration though between Teams and Skype and all the other functions that you got in Office makes it as good as it gets, but makes it pretty interesting. Yeah. So that was probably one of the deciding factors was we've invested a lot in Microsoft as it is. Do I still use email? Yes. Emails I think as a business have reduced because of being able to communicate over Teams, but I don't know if it's just me, but I still get a lot of emails. Probably another problem to solve.
Yeah, I think what we've seen is with emails is that it's the same with faxes, right? You go into an organisation and they insist that they still need half a dozen faxes, and you go, well, why? Well, there are people they do business with who need to use faxes, and therefore they need to comply. And that's, I guess it's what's happening with us as well. We've got organisations that are primarily using email, and until that whole thing shifts, you can't get away from it. However, what I have noticed is my email's reduced.
Yeah.
So it's the internal comms definitely drops.
Yeah, we've got a culture. We actually had that culture before we rolled out Skype or Teams. In that, when you want to send a message to the whole organisation, you don't send an email. You go and put it up, and people can go there for the information. So that we kind of had that culture already, but I suppose still for the size of our organisation and probably most of you, we still get a lot of emails. So we used to use SharePoint and publish it onto this site, and people could go and read the news or read what's going on in the office or read what the office ladies said. Now it's all on Teams. With the mini call center that we've got where customers are calling in, there are quite a few limitations in terms of how you can route calls and how you can have hunt groups and how you can link these things together in a consistent way. I think that's there are things you can do and there are workarounds, and Microsoft probably don't recommend all of those workarounds, but it's definitely it's one piece that we've actually rolled back our call center to a telephony system just because the product just isn't mature enough in that space yet. I think people are still getting used to using telephone conferences, so we were big, everybody deal with people around the world. They used a lot of the sort of standard telephone conferences. You set up a meeting, you set up a telephone conference, and then we say, well, you've got Skype, you've got Teams, you've got all this capability. Why are you still using this? And it took a really long time to break the habit of using your default. I'm just going to add a conference call, and I just want to phone the person. Yes, but there's much more benefits out of having a unit. So
some time ago, I had someone working with me, and they'd moved on to another role. And when I spoke to them again, and they were now working on some legacy communication system within their business, and they said, I really miss, and they gave me some features they really, really missed about the days when they were working with a full UC stack. So if you were to be in an organization that no longer had access to Teams, what would you really struggle? What's the old school method of things that you just can't see yourself going back to?
I kind of blur Teams and Skype a little bit to a degree. I suppose moving to this organization and not having Skype initially was quite hard for me because it was so easy and so easy to communicate and collaborate. So that being able to collaborate is really, really key. I think the other bit that's because I've enabled people to work remotely, work from home, the feature that you can blur the background is pretty awesome, because I'll sit in my room, and then depends on how tidy the room is, it depends on how I'll use the video or not. So that's a pretty good feature. Yeah.
You still have to wear a shirt though.
Yes, just a shirt.
Blur the light, hey?
Yeah. I'm sure eventually they'll start doing with, you can have a camera, you can have little dog ears, you can have a shirt. And as much as Teams has the ability to upload files, Teams is a collaboration tool. It's not your file storage. We realize that probably later in the game, where you don't want to have that as your source of truth, because it can't be. It's temporary. It sometimes it could get deleted. So we've more recently enforced the fact that use this as your collaboration tool, but don't use this as your source of truth. If you've got important documents, contracts, things that you need to work with, put them in SharePoint, put links to these documents in here rather. So make sure that, that was a learning for us, that you don't use this as your file storage solution. I think the other bit, just around using, we've got one company-wide Teams. One company-wide Teams, yes. And that's the one where we've got a bit of structure to it. We've got, this is kind of where everybody goes, and everyone's got access to it. And beyond that, we've basically given people reasonable range to create their own teams. We've got one of the people in our organization is there to help adopt Microsoft technologies and tools, or not just Microsoft, but adopt tools. So he goes and sits with the team and say, right, what do you want to achieve? How can we do this? They'll, he'll help create that team, but very quickly it's easy to create a team. Very quickly they're self-sufficient. I think generally things like we use Teams as our entry point for much more than just the collaboration. We use it, I don't know how much you guys use Planner, but that's quite big in our organization, just to be able to manage your tasks. And you link that up within Teams, within your sub-departments, that's kind of all they use to manage their tasks these days. And because Planner is so versatile and becomes it feels like it's part of Teams. Like almost don't have a Teams site without Planner. It's just, you want to be able to track actions, you want to be able to do things. For me, it's become now part of how we run our business. It's the entry point for us to manage people's tasks on a day-to-day basis, manage actions, not tasks, because of the Planner bit behind it. It's where we communicate as a company, and people are interactive with it. So somebody's going to, the CEO goes and puts a note out on Teams, people are going to like it, they're going to comment on it, they're going to chuck gifts against it. So it really helps with the culture of the organization. And it's really hard to link it just to being a telephony system, which it obviously isn't. But I think that's part of the things that just you wouldn't get out of any other telephony or any other collaboration system.
Yeah, it's a whole suite, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then a thorny question, eh? What about a thorny question? So, of course, throughout this journey, everything wasn't smooth running. Nothing ever is.
Come on.
Tell us about some of the challenges. What is perhaps something you wish you had known before moving ahead with some of the decisions you've made?
Yeah, so I didn't quite give you guys the whole story of how we got to Teams. The first move for us was to move to Skype for Business online, just as part of trying to get people to change the telephony system. So that was the first move that we did. But at the same time, we were also starting to use Teams in some of the areas, some of the more technology teams, just trying to see what the benefits of it. Our HR lady sort of caught onto it and could see that as a much more interactive way for us to communicate with staff and get a lot of people engaged. So that combination of us implementing Skype first led us to think about Teams potentially as the collaboration tool from a just interactive with our staff. And then you're at this point where, well, now you're going to have to teach them two systems. You're going to teach them Skype to make phone calls, because we're halfway through an implementation of Skype, when you can also sort of teach them to use Teams. So we were kind of in this rows of, do we wait for Teams to be feature rich to be able to do everything that we wanted to do, considering the call center and what we wanted to do, or do we just roll out two separate things and be able to give them both options? And I think we were a bit brave and went for Teams halfway through our implementation of Skype, and I think it's been a success. We've had some real challenges in the call center space where it wasn't that the product said what was on the label, but I think there was often it was inconsistent where customers would call in to the call center and it just wouldn't ring, and you wouldn't know where it was, and you'd be back and forth with vendors. Is it Microsoft? Is it us? Is it, who's implemented it? And often, or we also found a lot of the headsets that we had that they were causing some of the problems with the headset had some software on it, and it was dropping the calls, and you'd be on the phone for 20 seconds, and 20 seconds later, no more call. So we've definitely had some challenges in that space, and that's why the call center piece is now rolled back to just trying to solve their problems so we can take away their pain. The call centers, they're back on the old telephone system.
So what actually happens when you're such an early adopter? Very often the drivers, the bits and pieces are not ready yet. You kind of got to wait until that stuff's all ready. You can go in early, but it may hurt. I still have issues when I try to run Teams. If I fire up Skype when I've got Teams running, Skype will steal my audio time and again, even if I'm using said audio.
Yeah.
So that's not fun.
There are challenges also from a headset perspective that you can't on native. You could use a headset, press a button, and it's going to pick up the call. It doesn't work yet. So you've got to use your mouse and so on. If you press buttons, it just doesn't work.
The headset smarts are not there, so put it on and it auto detects that you put it on, and so therefore it answers the call. Skype, yes. Teams, not
so
quite.
much. Yeah.
So that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I think the other bit is, as we were halfway through our Skype implementation, we went ahead and bought a whole lot of devices, not these ones, but types of devices.
Different brand.
Yeah. And two types of brands. So we wanted two different products, thinking we're going to create a really good room experience. And for the one, it works really well, but for the other one, it just doesn't have. It can still make phone calls, but it doesn't have that nice, easy picture pull showdown where you can just join team meetings. The capability is not there, and as much as when you buy these things, they say they're future-proof and they're pretty new devices, they haven't been able to release the software to be able to fix it yet. So now these rooms are also in the state where you set up a meeting room where you expect nice audio and video, but actually you've got to join the room in a very manual, different way.
So you've bought a really expensive audio input.
Yes.
Okay.